This week, Mayor Lloyd Winnecke delivered his 2022 State of the City address at the Evansville Rotary Club's weekly luncheon. Mayor Winnecke joins us to talk a little bit more about some of the priorities he mentioned in his address, and he brought a few colleagues to discuss their area of expertise as well. That's coming up next on WNIN Newsmakers. In his State of the City address this week, Mayor Lloyd Winnecke highlighted some of the challenges that Evansville is facing and also some opportunities. Mayor Winnecke joins us now to talk a little bit more about what he covered in his State of the City presentation. Thank you for joining us.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
So a very neat multimedia presentation.
Yes.
So you did all the videoing yourself, right?
Well, we did. We used our, we did some video in-house. Noah Stubbs, our very capable communications director. And then we use ANCS, our outside computer vendor that does all of our IT work at the Civic Center. They have a whole media group. So we had enough video that one person or one group couldn't do it all, but it took a very coordinated effort and it came off really well.
Very nice presentation. So tell us, we got to know a little bit behind the scenes. How long does it take to prepare something like this? And
Yeah.
How long do you start thinking about what you're going to cover?
Yeah, typically we start thinking about it in January, what it's going to look like in March. And we always start with going back and looking at the previous year's State of this. And we don't just read it, we watch it. And we think, okay, we like that, we don't like this. And then we start talking about what elements we think need to be in it. And candidly, some issues roll over from year to year just because they're bigger than a bread box kind of issues that aren't resolved in 8 or 10 or 12 months. So we build an outline, then we'll kind of start writing just really rough sections of it. And then, it's like that college or high school paper that's due. The closer you get to your deadline, the bigger it gets, right?
Yeah.
So, the last 2 weeks, it's pretty intense carving out time just to sit and write and edit video and coordinate graphics. And fortunately, we have a really good team and we get along really well, and we understand what the other is saying when they're suggesting this. So it comes together pretty well.
So many things are going on in our city and actually in our region. So when you're thinking about putting this together, what kind of message are you wanting to convey to the public about what's happening in Evansville?
That's a good question. This year we divided it up in success, challenges, and opportunities. And so we started with successes, and we literally went back in about a 5.5 minute video, and we showed what's happened in the last 12 months that we need to celebrate as a community, because they are big wins for us, whether it's the opening of the Deaconess Aquatic Center or the Kenny Family Penguins of Patagonia exhibit, or the Lily King watch parties, or a description of the traffic preemption system for the fire department. We rolled all that in and talked, and that's how we sort of kicked off the speech. And then we got into the challenges that we face, because you can't do a State of the City with a straight face and just talk about all the glory and fun stuff, because there are some real issues that we face. So we spent the middle part talking about the challenges, and then the end was all about the opportunities that we think we have ahead. And they're typically more upbeat, although this year we spent a lot of time talking about mental health, because the City Council approved our request to spend several $1 million to help improve mental health. And so we spent a lot of time talking about that, because we really feel that's vital. And then we ended with something really fun, and we did a live shot, if you will, a live interaction with Wayne Kenny, he and his wife Beth are the naming rights sponsor for the Penguin exhibit. So they got to be the first official public feeders of the Penguins. Terrific. Because the Penguins are drawing big crowds, and starting in just a matter of a couple or 3 weeks, you'll be able to feed the penguins. Till this point, just the zookeepers have been doing that. So that's how we ended it. So we wanted something really upbeat and we think we accomplished that.
Wonderful. Well, we definitely want people to take a look at that whenever it hits the website. And you know, we brought in a couple of your department heads to talk about some of the initiatives that you covered in the State of the City address. Tell us a little bit more about some of the initiatives that you mentioned that are really on people's minds right now. Say 5th and Main project. Where do you see that headed?
Yeah, the 5th and Main project, first we showed the implosion, and everybody loves to watch the implosion, and we showed it from multiple angles, so it's super cool. But so the 5th and Main project, that block is now empty and cleared, ready for development. There are some last little things would have to happen before construction could begin. But you may recall that we rolled out last year a really dynamic design, 2 buildings, 6-story, 4-story, a nice park on the corner. But you know, the dreaded I word, inflation, has really hit this project, and it's hit it in a big way. And so we're having to step back from that design and reimagine what that project will look like. So our team is doing that. We're working on this weekly, if not daily, trying to figure out what project can fit there that really deserves to be in that block, right in the core of Main Street, and you know, just it needs to be a great project.
Oh, yeah.
But it also needs to fit within budget. And so we're working on it, and I'm really confident. I mean, it's this project has been basically 10 years in the making. I feel like I've been working on, you know, discussing this block with people for the better part of the 10+ years I've been in office. So I'm confident that that we'll have a good project there. It remains our #1 downtown priority, and we'll get there.
Well, we stand to get a lot of benefit from the READY plan as well, the READY project. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so READY grant, the state of Indiana allocated $500 million for communities around the state to come together to build better quality of place, increase population, improve workforce readiness. And so we were Southwest Indiana was one of 5 regions to be awarded the top grant of $50 million. So over the next many, many months, we'll be able to use some of that $50 million to supplement other projects that are going on in Vandenberg, Warwick, Posey and Gibson counties. So the 4-county region will really benefit from this. You may recall that we were one of the regional city winners. Several years ago, we got $42 million. We were able to leverage that into over $900 million in private sector and other public sector investment. So we're confident we can do the same thing with this READY grant. So it will do everything from provide funding for housing projects anywhere in the 4-county area to building quality of place projects. We're really excited that the team at the Evansville Regional Economic Partnership are leading the way on this and doing a phenomenal job, working with the state to understand what all the rules are, and there are a lot, but we'll benefit greatly from this over the next 2 years or so.
Lots of exciting things happening in our region, not just Evansville, but our region as a whole, and we appreciate the update. Thanks for being with us today.
Sure, my pleasure.
Joining us now is Deputy Mayor Steve Schaefer to talk about developments in the Parks and Recreation Department. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So you absorbed that role some time ago. How have things been going, and what are some of the new initiatives you've got on the table?
Right, it's been challenging, but at the same time, there are lots of opportunities in the Parks Department. You know, I started and immediately had to take over and complete the $30 million plus aquatic center. The Deaconess Aquatic Center has been a fantastic addition to the city, and it continues to grow programming and so forth. But most of my time has been on cleaning up things in the Parks Department. You know, whether it's new processes, procedures, you know, restructuring staff, and looking at everything that we're doing to make sure it makes sense. That's been a focus.
As you move that forward, you mentioned maybe a new master plan. Tell us a little bit about that. Tell us what the timeline is on that and what you're looking at in terms of moving the Parks Department forward.
Sure. Every city in the state needs to have an approved Parks master plan, a 5-year plan approved by the state. That helps the Parks Department and the city continue to plan for the future, whether it's big projects, whether it's improvements at neighborhood parks. It serves as that guide to help us forward.
So tell us a little bit about the inner workings of the Parks Department. You know, there's been a television show that talks about Parks and Rec. A lot of people think they have an idea of what happens behind the scenes in parks, but what does it really take to manage the day-to-day and, as you mentioned, staffing and all of the different parks that we've got in the city? It's a big job.
Sure. Well, just yesterday I was asked if I'm more of a Ron or a Leslie, and you know that's still debatable. But I would say that the Parks Department has lots of assets, whether it be parks, green space, whether it be facilities and buildings, but we have a very small staff. So it's hard to accomplish everything. It's hard to maintain what we have. So part of the challenge has been to try to restructure and put resources where we can best be the most effective. So we're trying to address problems in neighborhood parks that have been there forever, while also adding new features, whether it be at Roberts Park or Wesselman, you know, to try to do these things, or such as a skate park on the riverfront.
Sure. So you've got your paid staff, but do you utilize volunteers at all? I know some people that are in the neighborhoods, they've walked by their park and they want to see those improvements, and it is difficult. Do you take volunteers to help in those different neighborhood areas?
Absolutely. But we also need paid employees, seasonal employees, lifeguards. That's a whole other topic. But one of the things that I've been trying to do is create new partnerships, whether it be with the Trails Coalition or the YMCA, partner together on programs to try to grow rather than reinventing the wheel, and then, you know, try to grow and do new things.
As you mentioned, Deaconess Aquatic Center has been a big splash, really neat facility. Tell us a little bit about that and the programming and what kind of traffic you've seen gone through that facility since it opened.
Sure. Well, the YMCA has been a fantastic partner. They are managing the facility on a daily basis for the city. We've seen numerous high school swim teams that are practicing there, all the EVSC teams. Evansville Christian, UE had a big swim meet there. There's also the great swim program. So lots of activity that's happening throughout the year, but also we're starting to look at additional programming in the community, such as swim lesson program. We have a great program that the mayor announced yesterday. We're starting a pilot project with Delaware School, their after-school program. Their 3rd through 5th graders, about 62 students, will be going through a swim lesson program. So we would love to grow that in other schools going forward.
Of course, we're wanting to see some growth in the North Main area anyway, and now we're coming into spring and summer. So do you think that having that aquatic center in Garvin Park or right next to Garvin Park is really going to start to generate more activity around that and around the Bossy Field and things like that?
That's the hope. And so far we've seen a lot of interest. You know, we have not had a summer yet where the splash pad will be open. So that'll be fun to see that activity out there, the interaction with Bossy Field, with Otters games, and all the other events. The city swim meet will be at the Deaconess Aquatic Center this summer. So lots of good things on the horizon.
2 new projects moving forward, the skate park and also some improvements at Roberts. Can you tell us briefly about those?
Well, the skate park has been a fantastic project that has been led by Heather Vaught and a collection of community advocates in the skate and bike community. We think we have a pretty cool design that'll be actually public hearing this week to get input on that design, and hope to have that project start this summer.
Terrific. Yeah. Lastly, Roberts Park. I know a lot of people have wanted to see some movement there. Tell us real briefly what's happening there in those improvements.
Yes, this has been on our wish list for a while. We finally have some funding, both private and some public dollars, to start infrastructure work in Roberts Park. Schaefer Associates is redoing the design and adding some features. But the one thing that we wanted to be clear is we also wanted to have improvements at Wesselman. One of the things that drives me nuts is the entrance off Bakey. It needs a completely new entrance and something that we can all be proud of. So you'll see a lot of improvements in that area, both to the existing facilities and then also in the big green space that's out there.
Terrific. Lots of exciting things going on in that department. Thank you so much, Steve Schaefer, for joining us.
Thanks.
Now we're joined by Katie Adams of Southwestern Behavioral Health to talk about some newly acquired funds and what that means for local mental health efforts. Thank you so much for being with us, Katie.
You're welcome. Thanks for inviting me.
So very exciting news in that you got a big chunk of money, I want to say $10 million from the American Rescue Plan. I'm sure you have all kinds of ideas of how that money could be used. So tell us a little bit more about what you're planning.
Well, the mayor had asked me for a big, bold vision for our community, and so we've been talking with community partners for years now, actually, about what the needs are in our community, and so we have a plan for this. $6 million are going to go towards a residential short-term mental health unit for adults, and so this is a huge need in our community when individuals are hospitalized, or maybe they don't need to be hospitalized but are in crisis. They need some really intensive care, and that sometimes involves a residential setting. So not a hospital setting, but a residential setting. And so they'll be able to stay with us up to 6 weeks if needed to help them through that crisis and get the intensive services that they need rather than going home and maybe having to be rehospitalized or maybe you know, having other things happen that are undesirable.
So whenever it comes to something like that, residential services, are you building a new building? Do you have a plan on where that might be? And how long will something like that take before we can actually see patients?
Sure. So if you remember, Wellborn Hospital had Mulberry Center.
Right.
So Southwestern owns the Mulberry Center part of that property, and so the property already exists, so it's renovation. So the time it takes to renovate that whole floor and the exterior of that building, that it needs a lot of work. And so the time that will take to renovate that building, you know, we estimate 2 or 3 years is going to be a bit to be able to get all of that done, to be able to put that programming in there and get open.
So that's $6 million of the 10. What other plans do you have for some of the other remaining funds?
So the other significant gap in our community is for youth that have dual diagnosis. And what I mean by dual diagnosis is children that have mental health issues, but they also have intellectual and/or developmental disabilities. And so in our community, the resources are just very small. Families are waiting a very long time to get the services that they need, and they're not getting the intensity of the services that they need. And so this creates a family center, youth and family center for outpatient services with care coordination, rapid access for these families and these children to get the care that they need in our community rather than having to travel to a big city to get these types of services. So it's called a neurodevelopmental psychiatry clinic, so it's a lot of big words, but it's for these children that have these dual diagnoses and also for their families. It will include care coordination for their complex issues, therapies, in-home services, in-school services, as well as psychiatrists to meet their needs. And it's a partnership with Easter Seals, which is really neat because they provide services we don't, like physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech, psychological services and testing. And the idea is to have all of these services in one building, including other not-for-profits that have like missions to work with these families. So we have multiple not-for-profits in the same facility working together.
That's very exciting. We've talked a lot about collaboration, and that sounds like really taking a holistic view of what the kids and the families need. So, so you'll be looking at the building. How do you staff up for something like that, especially as we talk about some of the challenges with workforce, especially in the mental health arena?
Absolutely. You know, that's a big concern for all of us right now. Workforce issues are huge. So luckily with this program, we're able to use some existing staff, which is good. And it's going to grow over time. It's not like we're going to open the doors and have 500 clients, right? So it's going to grow over time. And so as we look to grow our workforce, we work really closely with our local universities who are also partnering in this project. So this is going to be a multidisciplinary training center also. So USI, University of Evansville, IU Med Center, they are all going to be placing clinical students in these programs who are going to be trained to work with this population in OT, nursing, PT, psychology, social work, all of those disciplines, and hopefully after they graduate, we'll keep them.
Well, I know some parents are watching that are like, oh my gosh, this is so amazing, and we can't wait to be able to utilize the service. What's the timeline on something like that?
Well, again, the existing facility that we are going to lease will need some renovations. So again, a lot of that's out of our hands as far as timeline goes. But I am hopeful that this time next year that we will be up and running.
Wow, and I've heard a little bit about a diversion center. Tell us a little bit more about that and what that is.
Well, the diversion center is actually going to be run by United Caring Shelter. And so Southwestern partners really close with that program. And so they have a shelter type setting for crisis. So it's called Evansville Diversion Center. And the idea is for individuals that don't need the specialty psychiatric services that we are going to be provided, they will be able to get that overnight kind of safe place to go to divert them from being arrested and going to the jail, to spend the night to kind of resolve that crisis and keep people from being arrested that don't need to be. If somebody presents there that needs the psychiatric level of care that we can provide, we're going to be working so closely with that team that we will just come get them, they'll drop them off, and we'll be working back and forth. So really it's another 7 beds for our community for crisis stabilization. It's just a lower level of intensity as far as services provided.
We've talked a lot about the mental health need in our community, but this is really a lot of service that we're looking to bring, or you're looking to bring with the partners to our community over the next few years. Do you think will make a good dent in some of the need that we've evaluated lately?
Absolutely. I mean, it's all about access. It's about being able to access the right service at the right time. And so these programs are creating these services that are the right services for individuals, that they'll have the access at the right time.
Wonderful. Wonderful for our community, and great that you're working with other partners. Thank you so much for your information, Katie. Thanks for being here.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
Finally, we're joined by Lane Young, who is the Executive Director of the Evansville Water and Sewer Department. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So let's talk a little bit about, we've seen a lot of activity on the riverfront, a brand new facility. Let's talk about the new water treatment facility. Tell us where it stands and how things are going.
So our new water treatment facility that will be built is going to be coming online. Well, we've got to move a city garage first to get there.
Okay.
So that'll happen, and then we'll start construction on a new water plant. Now we do have a facility that probably everybody has been watching come from the ground on its way up.
Exactly.
That's actually part of our sewer system, part of our discharge. And so that project's coming along really well, and we're very excited to open that up. We're hoping this summer. We're in it now, finally working in there, but the access, public access that we'll have in this facility this summer. So people will come along the walkway, be able to see this cascade. You probably maybe saw some pictures of that. It's a beautiful facility, so we're excited about that.
So I've seen the drawings in the past, so there are different elements of this, even some educational elements as well. So how does that plant kind of work alongside the treatment plant? How does that whole project kind of fit together?
Yeah, so right now we have a separate wastewater treatment facility that's not too far from that location. Most people can see it when you're on the Veterans Parkway coming in. And that is where all the sewage on the east side of town, kind of it funnels down into that by gravity mostly. And then we treat that. And then we have to put the treated water back into the river. In the past, we had a pipe that would go that way, but we also would have to put it into B Slough a lot of the time.
Oh, okay.
So that's where you would get some of the backup. This new facility takes that water straight from our plant. We pipe it from the plant to the pump station, and it takes it up and out and over that cascade.
Okay.
So that's how it's integrated into our current system.
Okay. Well, the Indiana Utility Commission recently approved a new rate to pay for that water treatment plant. So tell us a little bit about the increase in the rate, where that came from, and how important it is to building this new facility.
Well, it's very important because in order for us to build this facility, we have to have the capacity to borrow money and repay that money. And that's really the driver on rate increases, right? When we have to add infrastructure to our system, we have to build something new. That takes dollars, that takes capital investment, and those are usually pretty large dollars. And so it's not that we have that cash sitting in the bank. So we borrow, we issue a bond, and then we get a bunch of money. We build our new infrastructure, and then we pay that back over time. And we get the authority to do that through the Indiana Utility Regulatory Commission to raise rates to basically cover that new increase in debt service. So that's a very technical way of saying what happens, but the rate increase for this water plant will be around 5% this first year, 5.03 to be exact, I think. And that at a 5,000 gallon user, that's a $2.27 increase. So that'll happen in July 1st. So we've been given the order. We won't implement it till July 1st of 2022.
I know this is kind of a timing issue right now. A lot of people are seeing inflation. There has been some response about the increasing rates for all different types of utilities and prices. But you have a new program that you're going to launch in the summer to give some assistance. Is that correct?
That is correct. And it's something we've been looking at for a little while. We recognize that we have a good portion of our customer base that are at or near the poverty level here in Evansville. It's an affordability problem we as a city have. And so it's something as a utility, how can we mitigate that? And we've been looking at different ways. And we've had some small programs in the past, but nothing really adequate to meet the need. And so with the American Rescue Plan funds that have become available, as the mayor and the administration were discussing ways that we could use it, this was cited as one that could have a great impact for those that really need the most help. And so we're excited to have those funds, and we look to let that sort of jumpstart a program that we hope to develop that over time we'll maintain.
And there's an expectation that maybe that program will start in the summer, or more information will come out in the summer?
We will have it out. We will tie the availability of those funds to when the rate increase happens, so that in some ways people's bills will go up, but the resources to help those bills will also be available at the same time.
Another thing that we've talked about before is the upgrades in infrastructure to the rest of the lines throughout the city, and that's been a huge project. How has that been going, and what's kind of the timeline you see in terms of replacing some of those old pipes?
Yeah, those are going well. We've been on a path to try to do around 15 miles of pipe per year. We will take a pause in that because, again, we need those monies for the water treatment plant, and we don't want to add water treatment plant money and more pipe money. So the pipe project will take a bit of a pause as we do the water treatment plant, but it's going well. First Avenue is a major one that we're hoping is going to wrap up this summer, and I know the citizens of the north side, and really all of us who go up and down that corridor, are ready for that road to be back in place, and we're hoping to get that there soon.
All right, well, let's talk a little bit about some adjustments to the sewer rate as well. You know, water, but then there's the sewer side of this. So tell me what's happening with those sewer rate increases and how those have been going in implementation of that.
Well, I think people may be aware of this, some may not, that 2011, the federal government came in as part of the Clean Water Act and said we need to solve a problem. And that problem was putting combined sewer overflow. So when rainwater meets sanitary sewer, too much water is in a pipe and it has to go somewhere, right? And we don't want it going into people's homes, which is where it would go. And so we had these overflows created, and this was decades ago, right, to solve that problem. But the EPA has said you can no longer solve your problem that way, you need to have another solution. So that's when the consent decree happened, and we've been working to kind of meet the projects to solve that problem, but we hit an affordability issue, as I shared earlier. So it's all the same group of customers paying the sewer and the water. Right. And so we've been working with the agencies to put a pause on the program that they asked us to implement to find a more affordable program, a more adaptable program, and one that might give us a little more time. Because that's really, if you look at the bill, if you look at your bill, a substantial portion of your bill is not the water increase that we're about to implement. That's a couple dollars a month. The sewer side is quite a bit higher. All
right. Well, some good things happening, at least in that upgrade, and we appreciate your information. Thanks for being with us, Lane.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Well, thanks to all of our guests for helping us understand the specifics of the state of the city of Evansville. Next week, we'll be taking a look at the tornado recovery efforts in Kentucky. Thanks for watching WNIN Newsmakers.